cracked or broken. They're properly mounted and secured with the 2 screws, 1 on each side. And at the end of the test, when we go to check our lights, we'll check them to make sure they work. Coming down to our windshield. The windshield gets two exams, I guess you could call it. One from here and then one from the driver's seat. But from right here, we don't see anything cracked or broken, and we don't see any stickers illegally blocking the view of the driver. Coming down to our headlights on both sides. The lenses, the covers, are clear and clean, not cracked or broken. Properly mounted and secured by hardware we can't see, but we know it's there. And also on each side, we have our turn signals on each side. Amber in color. The lenses, again, are clean, clear, not cracked or broken. And at the end of the test, we'll check those along with the rest of our lights. We want to look underneath here. We're looking for any kind of puddles, any kind of fluid, just to make sure we don't have anything leaking before we pop the hood. Then we want to look down the right side. We want to look down the left side. Make sure the vehicle's not leaning left or right, but give consideration to the ground in which it's parked on. Because if the ground is leaning, the truck will be leaning. All right? So now we pop the hood. Start on this side over here. All right, the method I like to use, number one, name the part. You got to name the part. If on your test you sit there and describe this all day long, but you don't name it, you don't get credit for it. You've got to know the name of the part. So we're going to name it. Then we're going to list what bad things we're looking for. Then we're going to tell them how it's properly mounted and secured, and then we're going to tell them how it's driven, if it's driven. And there's only 4 parts that are driven. So we're going to start out naming this part here. That's our alternator. What are we looking for that's bad? It's not cracked, bent, or broken. How is it properly mounted and secured to the vehicle? 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts. All right, and it is driven. How is it driven? By the belt. So the belt itself, when I go to pull on it, it has to be between 1/2 and 3/4 inches of pull. The belt cannot be cracked, cut, or broken, or coming apart. And the wires right here, connected to the alternator. We don't see any exposed copper. They're properly mounted and secure with the right screws and the right nuts right here, and the proper hardware here. We have no missing hardware. Coming on down to here, our water pump. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and because we're dealing with fluid, it ain't leaking. How do we know it's not leaking? Look down here. Look for any wet spots directly beneath it, either on these springs or on the ground. That's an indication that it's leaking. It is properly mounted and secured by hardware we can't see, but we know it's there. And it is driven. There's no belts nearby, so that leaves only one other way it can be driven. Gear driven. All right. So gear driven. All the hoses connected to it, here. We're going to group all these hoses right here together with it. All of our hoses are not cracked. They're not broken. They're not leaking any fluid or any air. They're properly mounted and secure with the right clamps. Can't see them, but we know that they're there. Our exhaust, starting with this clamp right here. The clamp is present, not missing. It's not cracked or broken. And we're looking for black soot to be on top of the pipe here. That's an indication we got a leak. Because if you got a leak right here, you want to get that fixed, because this is some serious carbon monoxide poisoning. All right, so our ring, our clamp, present, not missing, not cracked or broken, and no black soot. Follow that on to underneath to the back here. For the rest of the exhaust, as our pipe comes underneath the cab, we have the proper clamps for proper hardware here. Proper clamp, proper hardware here. All of our nuts and bolts are present, no hardware is missing. And up here, we have this bracket that connects the muffler to the back of the cab. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. Proper hardware here, nuts and bolts, no hardware is missing. And then we move on to the other side of the engine. There's only a few things on this side, everything else we do on the other side. All right, starting up here at the top, we have our coolant reservoir. First things first, we'll make sure it's got proper fluid level and it's not leaking. Again, just look beneath here for any wet spots. That'll let you know that it's leaking. We don't see any on the ground, don't see any on the vehicle. It is properly mounted and secured. 1, 2, 3, 4 nuts and bolts. And all the hoses on this side. Right here. We're going to do like we did the hoses on the other side. Not cracked, broken, properly mounted and secured, like clamps right here. It's got clamps right here, clamps right there. All right, moving on down. Nothing down here. We're going to come over here. Our air compressor. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It is properly mounted and secured. If you look inside, you got bolts here. You got a bolt back there. You got a couple of bolts over here. And it is gear driven. Oh, and another thing too, we don't hear any leaking air because it's dealing with air right here. These hoses connected to it right here and right here. We want to make sure they too are not leaking any air because that's what's coming out of it. Coming over to here and here is our old dipstick. On the day of your test, you don't have to pull it out, but you can if you want to. And check it like you would look in your car, no different. But you can just simply describe it to them. Pull it out, wipe it off, put it back in. Make sure it's between add and full. And should we need to add oil, you add it right here at the filler neck or filler tube. And we add 1 gallon at a time. You gotta make sure you tell them that on the test. We add 1 gallon at a time. Coming across over to here is our power steering pump. It's not cracked, bent, broken, and because we're dealing with power steering fluid, it ain't leaking. Again, look on the ground. Look for any wet spots anywhere around it. It's properly mounted and secured. Bolts here, bolts on the other side we cannot see. It is gear driven. It is the last of our driven parts. These hoses connected to it right here. We want to make sure that they too are not cracked or broken, properly mounted and secured with the right clamps here and over here. And that leads us over to this guy here. This is our one free one. Look right there. It tells you right on the cap what it is. Power steering. And if you miss that one, look over here on the other side. Big old sticker. Power steering reservoir. And just like this reservoir, proper fluid level. It's not leaking. We don't see nothing wet beneath here. Properly mounted and secured. 1, 2, 3 nuts and bolts here. And not cracked or broken. Coming down to here. This is our power steering gearbox. So it's not cracked, bent, broken. And again, we're dealing with fluid, so it's not leaking any fluid. It is properly mounted and secured to the frame. If you can see right here, big old nuts and bolts here, right here. You got a couple under here also. Pitman arm. Not cracked, bent, or broken. Connected to the steering box, as you can see, bolt and nut right here. Hardware is not missing. This is our drag link. And it is connected to the pitman arm by way of this ball socket right here. And this ball socket consists of a rubber bushing, castle nut, and a cotter pin. And those two have to be there. All right. If that cotter pin is missing and that thing comes loose, you ain't gonna be able to steer this vehicle. That's the reason why it's designed like that. In case this nut gets loose, that pin keeps it from coming off. Down here, this right here, upper steering arm. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. And it is properly secured to the drag link the same way. It's got a ball joint right here. It's got a bushing, it's got a castle nut, and it's got a cotter pin. Connected the same way right here, same thing right here, no different. All the way down toward the bottom, that round rod right there, that's your tie rod. Goes from tire to tire. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. And it too is connected on each side the same way. If you look down here, in between here, you'll see that you have a ball joint, a bushing, a castle nut, and a cotter pin. That's all of our steering components. Now we'll go to the frame and suspension. The frame right here. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. No illegally drilled holes, no illegal welds. And don't say it's properly mounted and secured. There's a reason why. Because everything is properly mounted and secured to it. All right. Frame right here. And the frame you're going to do in 3 areas. You're going to do it in the middle and you're going to do it in the back also. This is what we call our leaf spring mount right here. It's not cracked, bent, broken. It's properly mounted and secured to the frame. As you can see, you have nuts and bolts right here. You got a couple more over here and some on the other side. No missing hardware. Leaf springs, not cracked, bent, or broken, or scissored or shifted like this. And it is properly mounted and secured to the leaf spring mount. You got a bolt and a nut on the other side. And right here in the middle, you have a rubber bushing that's present, not missing. Holding it all together in the middle, you have two U-bolts. And they're called that because they're shaped like a U. All right. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. And if you look underneath here, on each side, you've got a nut on each side of the U-bolt, properly mounting and securing it to the leaf springs. Shock absorber. It's not cracked, bent, broken, or leaking, because those things will leak if they bust. The main thing is that it's not leaking. At the bottom and at the top, nut and bolt properly mounted and securing it, no missing hardware. Now we move on to our brake system, starting with this hose right here. This is our brake chamber hose. It is not cracked, broken, or leaking any air. It is properly mounted and secured to the frame by being threaded in over here behind this filter. And in the back of the brake chamber, it is also threaded in. The brake chamber right here, again, not cracked, bent, or broken. It's not leaking any air. It is properly secured in the middle with this clamp right here. And it is secured to the vehicle, nut and bolt right here, and another nut and bolt underneath here. We have our push rod, this thing right here, that goes into the brake chamber. And it's connected to our slack adjuster, this thing right here. Neither one are cracked, bent, or broken. We properly mounted and secured to the vehicle. And with the brakes off, no more than 1 inch of pull. You gotta make sure you mention that 1 inch of pull on your test. On the inside here, which is really hard to see unless I turn this tire. Anybody familiar with the old drum brake style? All right, on the inside, you have what you call your brake shoes. What we're looking for on the brake shoes is minimum 1/4 inch thickness. It's properly mounted and secured, no oil, no grease. And it's pushing up against the brake drum. The brake drum itself, right here. Not cracked or broken, no illegal welds, no oil, and no grease. Now we're going to start grouping a few things here. Our tire rim, the outside and the inside. Same rim, just two different sides. So we can group them together. We want to make sure our inside and our outside of our rim is not cracked, broken, or illegally welded. Coming up to our tire sidewalls. You got your outside wall and your inside wall. A, B, C, D. No abrasions, no bubbles, no cuts, no dry rot. Coming across the top of our tire. We want to have even wear from side to side and all the way around on all of our tires. And our tire tread depth minimum on your steer tires is 4/32 of an inch. If it goes below 4/32, you got to put new steer tires on here. And our tire pressure, it's not a number. Even though there's numbers written on the tire, you just simply tell them that the tire pressure is factory recommendation to be checked with an air gauge. And you check it right here at the valve stem. You want to tell them that the valve stem, it's not cracked, bent, broken, has the proper cap on it, and it's not leaking any air. And all of this is all properly mounted and secured to the vehicle by way of the lug nuts. We will make sure all of our lug nuts are present, none are missing. 3 signs we're looking for to let you know that you got a loose lug nut. See the threads? See how they're all rusty and nasty looking? That's actually a good sign. Because if they're shiny, guess what? That means that lug nut's loose and knocking off all that rust. We also don't want to see no streaks coming out from underneath here like rust or water, because an indication that it's loose. And also, there's a hole right here that all these studs come through. We don't want to see that hole, because if you can see that hole, again, that means you got a loose lug nut. And then right here, we have our hub seal. We can see that all the hardware is present, none missing. Every bolt is there. We want to make sure there's no pooling of any fluid right here. That lets you know you got a leak. And proper fluid level is up to the bottom of this rubber seal right here. All right, before we leave this area, any questions? Now we're going to move on to the rest of the vehicle. All right, once you're done with the engine compartment, we're going to start right here with our door hinge. Our door hinge, you have it on the outside, you got it on the inside. Same hinge, just two different sides. Want to make sure it's not cracked or broken. Properly mounted and secured to the vehicle. If you look through the crack here, you can see we have the proper bolts, no hardware missing. Sorry. Coming over to our mirror right here. The mirror, the glass itself is clean, not cracked or broken. Properly mounted and secured to the vehicle on this bar by way of hardware here, and we got hardware underneath right here. Our glass on the outside, it's clean and clear, not cracked or broken. Our door handle, we want to make sure it keeps the door shut. We also want to make sure it opens the door. We want to make sure, again, it keeps it shut and opens. Inside the door, we have our door seals right here. Got your outer and inner seals. You can just say door seals. You don't got to say inner or outer. But we want to make sure all the rubber is present, none of it's missing, cracked, or dry rotted. Also, push that in tight. All right, let me try it again. Still not.
So you can close the door, it'll pop up.
Nah, it's right here. It's just T-handle. It's right here. Well, it opens from that side. Cold weather or something. Wait till you get towards really damn cold weather and it doesn't want to open up. There it goes. All right. Just leave it open for right now. All right. We got to go down to our fuel tank. Now, when y'all go to test, you're not going to test on this truck here. You're going to test on those trucks like he's doing over there. You can't really see the fuel tank because the fairings are in the way. So it'll be easier on the day of your test than it is right here. We want to start with our fuel cap. We want to make sure it's on tight. All you got to do is push. And if you feel that spring, that lets you know that it's working. And we're not leaking any diesel underneath here. And the fuel tank itself, it's not cracked, bent, or broken. And it's not leaking any diesel. Look down here for any diesel leaking on the ground. And the tank is properly mounted and secured to the vehicle. If you look right here, you can see we got a tank strap here. And I'll show you again on the back side what they look like over there. Our steps right here are clean and clear of any debris. Properly mounted and secured. We got 2, 4, 6, 8 bolts plus more running all the way down. No missing hardware. Coming back here. Now again, here's the difference between this truck and those trucks. See, those trucks don't have sleepers on them like y'all sit inside. So this emergency equipment will actually be inside the cab, not under here. So you'll just make this a part of your in-cab instead of on the outside. But what you got to do is you got to check your fire extinguisher. It must be A, B, C rated. Look inside the sight glass right here. There's a yellow arrow, and that yellow arrow must be in the green field, indicating it's properly charged. And it is properly mounted and secured to the vehicle with a strap right here. We have 3 reflective triangles. If that lid is on, make sure you're on the day of your test. Take it off. Make sure you count 1, 2, 3 triangles. And on the inside of the truck, we keep fuses in there. We don't keep them in here. But I'm going to say it anyhow while I'm right here. We got to also have 1 spare fuse for every amp on the vehicle. And we got those on the inside. This light right here. Lights are easy. You just state the obvious. All right, amber in color. The lens itself is not cracked or broken. 1, 2 screws properly mounting and securing it to the vehicle. And you have to list the purpose of these lights. This light has 3 purposes. When you turn on the headlights, it's a running light. It comes on and stays on. But beyond that, it's a turn signal and a four-way flasher. Anytime you say turn signal, it's automatically a four-way flasher. Always. They're like married, like Fred and Ginger. You know, they always go together. So four-way, turn signal, and a running light. Coming to the back here. There's nothing on the back of the cab we got to worry about. But we do got to talk about these airlines right here. So my airlines right here, properly mounted and secured to the back of the vehicle right here and here by being threaded in. The hoses themselves are not cracked or broken. I don't hear any audible air leaks. They're not dragging on the catwalk, which means our springs are doing their job. They're not missing. They're also properly mounted and secured over here. So on the day of your test, just simply grab the glad hands and make sure they're tight. The glad hand here is tight. This glad hand here is tight. No audible air leaks. Our electric line, it's not cracked or frayed. There's no exposed wires and no electrical black tape. Can't use that as a temporary fix. It ain't gonna work. So they want you to make no electrical tape, no exposed wires, properly mounted and secured to the trailer right here, and properly mounted and secured to the cab right here. And it too is not dragging on the catwalk. The catwalk itself, all the planks are here, none are missing, cracked or broken. They're properly mounted and secured to the frame with these handles here and here. It's connected to the frame. The frame, just like up front. Not cracked, bent, or broken. No illegal welds, no illegally drilled holes. Down here in the middle, this drive shaft. This long shaft here goes from the transmission to the rear end. And it's not cracked, bent, broken. It's not twisted, and there's no debris wrapped around it. And it's connected to the tractor by way of universal joints here and also up here. You can't see it, but we got universal joints also up here as well. And inside those universal joints, no debris. Coming down to here is our leaf spring mount. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It's properly mounted and secured to the frame. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nuts and bolts. No hardware is missing. We have our leaf springs right here, just like we do up front. The leaf springs, same inspection as up front. It's not cracked, broken, not scissored or shifted. Properly mounted and secured to the leaf spring mount. Nut and bolt here, nut and bolt right there. In the middle, we can't see it unless you really get up here to want to see it, but you don't have to. It's the same setup as up front. You got 2 U-bolts. You also got a shock absorber, and you would inspect them just like you did up front. The U-bolts, not cracked, bent, broken, properly mounted and secure with 2 nuts, 1 on each side. The shock absorber, not leaking. That's the biggest thing you got to mention on there. It's not leaking. And it's mounted and secured on the top and bottom with nuts and bolts. Also, there's an airbag back there. You don't have airbags in the front, but you do in the back. And when we get to it, I'll show you how to inspect that. But also our brakes. And the brake system back here is the same as it is up front, starting with the brake chamber right there. All right, the brake chamber, just like up front. Not cracked, bent, or broken, not leaking any air. It also has those clamps in the middle, securing it together. Now these brake chambers have 2 air hoses instead of 1, but you still inspect them the same. The quantity doesn't matter. So both of our air hoses right here. Or you can see on that other side over there, like those 2 right there. Those are the 2 air hoses. Just like any other air hose, just like this one. Not cracked or broken or leaking any air, no audible air leaks. On the back side, you can't see it unless you're right here where I'm at. And even still, I can't see it, but I know it's there. You got your push rod and your slack adjuster. All right, neither one are cracked, bent, or broken. They're properly mounted and secured. And with the brakes off, no more than 1 inch of pull. On the inside, again, you can't see it, but it's the same setup as up front. You got your brake shoes and your brake drums. All right, on the brake shoes, no less than 1/4 inch, properly mounted and secured, not cracked or broken, no oil, no grease. The brake drums, same thing as up front, no different. Not cracked, not broken, no oil, no grease. The tires back here, again, we're going to do our sidewalls. Or excuse me, just go to the rims. The rims, guess what? You know what this rim is? It's the exact same rim as that one right there, only it's turned around. That's all. So it's the same thing on the outside and the inside, not cracked or broken, no illegal welds, and we got no debris on the inside or in the middle here. Got to make sure in between these dually tires, no debris, all right? No garbage, no dead animals, you know, whatever. We want to make sure we got the proper spacing between the two tires right here. And on these drive tires, on our sidewalls, outside and inside, on all of our tires back here, A, B, C, D. No abrasions, no bubbles, no cuts, no dry rot. Again, coming across the top, even wear. Tread depth is different back here than it is up front though. Up front, it's 4 30 seconds. Back here, it's 2 30 seconds. All right, so we got 2 30 seconds minimum tread depth here. Our tire pressure is factory recommendation to be checked with an air gauge at the valve stem. And we're going to check all of our valve stems back here, just like we checked that one up front. That's not cracked or broken. It's not leaking any air. And now this one doesn't have it, but it's still supposed to have the proper cap on it. All right. This here is different. Up front we had a hub, but this is called an axle. So we want to make sure our axles are not leaking by checking for any puddles down here. We can see we got all the studs and all the nuts present. All the hardware is here, not missing. Our lug nuts, all present, none missing, and you inspect them the same as you would up front. Same exact inspection. There are no shiny threads. There's no streaks coming underneath them, and we cannot see the hole through which the stud comes through. Now we're going to start with our trailer. At the top, we have clearance lights, amber in color. The lens is not cracked or broken. It's properly mounted with that rubber seal. And again, when we go to check our lights, we'll check them to make sure they're working. The front of our trailer here, this is called our header board. We'll make sure all rivets, these things right here, all the rivets are present, none are missing. No holes, no dents, no bulges. Coming down here to the front, right here is what we call the front of our apron. And the plate underneath here, that's the rest of the apron. We want to make sure that the apron is not cracked, broken, or illegally welded. All right, over here, let me get in the middle here.
If you want.
We're going to talk about our coupling system.
Yeah.
All right, the coupling system consists of this right here. What most people call a fifth wheel is actually called the skid plate. And when you call it fifth wheel, and you'll be okay. But try to call it the skid plate on the day of your test. All right, skid plate right here. We want to make sure that they're between the apron and between the skid plate, there is no gap. We don't want to see no daylight right here. We want to make sure it's metal on metal. And it's properly lubricated. We see all this grease. You want that to be greased, a lot of grease. Right here, this is our lock-in and release handle. Right now, it's in the in or locked position, which you want it to be there when you're coupled to a trailer. And it too is not cracked, bent, or broken. This all right here sits on top of this. This right here is called the platform. The platform, we want to make sure it's not cracked, bent, or broken. And as you can see, look at all these nuts and bolts right here. That's what properly mounts and secures it to the frame. Coming on down, right here's that airbag I was telling you about. You got 4 airbags back here, all right? You treat an airbag just like a tire. Because a tire is a big piece of rubber with air in it. That airbag is a big piece of rubber with air in it. It just don't have no tread, that's all. So, again, no abrasions, no bubbles, no cuts, no dry rot, and it's not leaking any air. And it's properly mounted and secured. 1, 2, 3 nuts and bolts. All right. The side of our trailer, from here all the way down, both sides of our trailer. No missing rivets, no holes, no cuts, no dents or bulges. the DOT tape right here. DOT tape runs the full length of the trailer on both sides. All right, coming to here. Mud flap. We want to make sure the mud flap itself, it's not cracked or broken, it's not dragging on the ground. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 nuts and bolts, properly mounting, securing it to the vehicle. You also want to make sure you got proper clearance right here. So that way when the tractor goes to turn, it doesn't run into the landing gear. Now you got to get underneath. This is the part that I hate. On the day of your test, you got to get under here. And what we're looking for up front, first thing we're looking at is the kingpin. That's that big hunk of metal that comes straight down from the apron. We want to make sure it's not damaged, it's not cracked or bent or broken. Going sideways in front of the kingpin, that's called our locking jaw. You got to make sure it too is not damaged. No cracks, no bends, no broken. And it's in the locked position, which is where you want it to be when you're coupled with the trailer. Coming on back, the frame back here. Just like the frame in the middle and up front. It's the same frame.
Yeah.
It's not cracked or bent or broken. No illegal welds, no illegally drilled holes. Coming over to here. This light is not on the test. All right, that's your reverse light. You don't got to worry about it. However, these two lights are on the test. So we're going to do the obvious. Red in color. The lens itself is not cracked or broken. It's properly mounted and secured to the vehicle. 1, 2, 3 rivets. These lights serve 4 purposes. These are the only 4-purpose lights on the whole vehicle. It's a brake light, it's a running light, turn signal, 4-way flashing. Up above me here. Right here. From there, all the way down. These are called cross members. All right, they're not cracked, they're not bent or broken. They're properly mounted and secured to the vehicle, either on the outside here by bolts, nuts, and rivets. And if you look up under the floor here, you got hardware coming down from the floor, properly mounting and securing it. The floor of the trailer, right here. No holes. No holes in our trailer floor. Landing gear. First of all, we want to make sure the landing gear is properly raised in the upright position. We want to make sure it's properly mounted and secured. We've got nuts and bolts all over the place, and we also got welding. So we got a little bit of both. Some welding and hardware. Our cross members right here, they too, properly mounted and secured. You got welding and you got nuts and bolts as well. And the crank handle over here is in the secured position. Handles it under here. Now we got to go all the way back. I'm trying to see some low to the ground. All right, we're almost out of time. This middle light right here, amber in color, not cracked or broken, properly mounted and secured, 2 screws. Again, 3 purposes: running light, turn signal, 4-way flashing. I'll tell you what, we ain't got time to finish back here. What we'll do tomorrow morning we'll start back here, because we got to get out of here. All right, so let's go load up. And let me see. We got to go back over to